Welcome to the Greatness Garage Podcast, the place where small businesses get big answers. And here you'll find the ideas and answers to solve your small business problems and have the opportunity to ask for accountability if you need it. We call it the garage because you need to be ready to get your hands dirty. We'll not make false promises and will not hide you from the true work that is required to get the results. In this podcast, you will get insights from entrepreneurs who have gone through it and listen in as business owners going through it get live direction from Jim and Brad to find the solutions live on air. In addition, we will follow up with the participants so that you can hear how they are progressing weeks and months later. We don't just tell you what works, we show you. I'm your host, Brad Borkus, founder of Epitome Coaching Consulting, and with me is Jim Keener, entrepreneur extraordinaire. We are your guides for this journey, and we have both scars of experience and servant hearts to help listeners and participants alike, not just learn, but understand. This is a different kind of podcast to get a different kind of results. Our mission is to serve you, the listener, to allow you to be the greatest business owner you can be. Welcome to episode 2 of the Greatness Garage. We are here with Jim and Brad, and Jim, I hear that you've got some really interesting stuff going on. Fill us in a little bit on this.
Solution to the big problem. Me and Brendan were talking off. I was on the phone with one of the major manufacturer reps for ResMed, a CPAP company. Talking at he's an Indian guy, and we're looking at how to convert CPAPs into ventilators at scale. And that just popped into my head like an hour ago, and the last hour has been unbelievable, Brad. I mean, I got guys smoking 2 cigars with the pulse oximeter on to get their O2 low enough. One of them's going to go lay down and wait for it to come back. The other one's going to get on CPAP and video the whole thing and show how if you come down with COVID, you can't get a ventilator, but we can convert a CPAP. You can rent a vent from us. Right? Or you can just buy a kit. I can build the whole damn thing online, put it in a package, and start selling them. They're the second best thing to a ventilator. I'll have a respiratory therapist, pulmonologist come on and talk about it. It's $1 billion move. I told him, and he said, "You're the smartest fucking man I know."
How did you think of this, Jim?
I literally told my wife, right? I said, here's the scenario. I have a ResMed, an old one, right? And that used to just blow my fucking eyes out of my head, right? Literally. And I thought, man, this thing is crazy, right? And what happened is there's an override that you can override the computer and ramp it up, right? And so if you have COPD, and me being a paramedic, I understand how to manage the airway, right? So when I first started, when I was 20, we had this PPV valve as a positive pressure ventilation valve hooked to an oxygen tank, and when you would blast it, it would blast you up to 70 mm of fucking air all the way down about 40. So we already know the maximum that you can get is about 70 to 40 before you blow their fucking eyes out or blow out their diaphragm. So when you ramp it down further, right? You ramp it down. Your internet connection's unstable. Anyway, when you ramp it down further, it allows you to then still receive the amount of atmospheric air. But if I put an oxygen port on it, then I could pump 100% O2 into that port, and then effectively it would be a ventilator. Wow. So I did the test, right? So now I have the guys smoking cigars. I'm thinking, what is the way I can get that O2 stat? So one of them said he's got this mask you put on for exercising, and that basically ramps your heart rate up and brings your O2 down. But when you're already healthy, you'll recover rather quickly. So I need to show more of a compromise. And so what's compromised is if you ever fight fires, after you get done fighting a forest fire, you're wheezy and your lungs crackle. Mm-hmm. And the alveoli sticks together. And so it makes it very difficult to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. And so they sometimes give you a vasodilator, some type of an inhaler. Yeah. But they also... when I was on CPAP, he told me that would clear my lungs because when I'm involuntarily pushing out, as soon as I start, it blows that air back in. And so that positive pressure is more atmospheric inside pressure, which then forces everything out, right? So effectively, we created a very cheap ventilator where these things cost on the market, 30, 40,000. I think you've heard the
Yeah,
term.
Right.
Yeah, and we can get into a brand new one for less than $1,000, completely set up ready.
I saw GM, it came up with theirs, and they actually had ones that was a GM name and then a Chevy name and then a Cadillac name. And the Cadillac one was like $57,000. I'm like, fuck.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think we have that. I think we got the solution. I got a guy who runs sleep centers. I got the guy I got the ResMed manufacturer's representative. I got a venture capital guy that runs a fund. So, I got the right player. They're all telling me I need to patent it and don't tell people. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in let's solve some problems.
Let's get it out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so here's what I'm thinking. This is where it'll be most effective. It'll be most effective when keeping people out of the fucking hospital.
Yeah.
Because if you understand certain things about this virus, you understand this. So with your pulse oximeter that goes on your finger, it'll tell you what oxygen saturation level you have, right? Mm-hmm. If you're having difficulty breathing, but your stats are still in the high 90s, you're fine. You're just having difficulty breathing, okay? If your oxygen saturation level, which is what a stat is, if the oxygen saturation level starts to fall below 93, you're starting to have some problems, right? You get below that, you're going to have some problems. And so that will tell you when you need to be on CPAP or when you don't need to be off CPAP. It'll also tell you when you need to go to the hospital or when you don't need to go to the hospital, right? And so providing that you have that ability, you now have the ability to use telemedicine. You manage the fever. You then manage the airway, which ABCs, right? Airway, breathing, circulation.
Yep.
So you manage the airway. And so by managing the airway, that's going to control your heart rate problems, because if you get low oxygen, heart rate has to go up to try to compensate for it, which can put you into cardiac arrest, right? And so if you operate in this scope using the CPAP, you're less likely to become hypoxic. You're less likely to go into cardiac arrest. You're more likely to have positive pressure pushing out the fluid in the lung, and therefore you got a better. So, you do that, vasodilator, you take some Lasix, which makes you piss a lot, drops a lot of the fluid off the body.
Yeah.
You try to stay hydrated with a certain amount of measured liquid, and try to balance that out. And it's a 6-7 day run, right? If you can manage it, I think you're going to be well on your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said too, that person, you said too, like just the difference between, what percentage of people have gone into the hospital that could have stayed, just outside, yeah.
Majority, actually, there's people talking about that once they get the difficulty breathing and the tightness and the stress, they go.
Well, and none of this too. Even if a hospital could say, somebody comes in and says, okay, you're not here. Here's a CPAP. Here's a low cost expense. They won't rent this. This will meet you. I know. Yeah, good point. Right.
No, they won't do that. It's going to have to be done a certain way. I don't know. I'm thinking on the open market, just like selling a defibrillator. Before, if you would have put a defibrillator on the market, people would have said, oh my God, you're selling this medical device and you could just kill a whole bunch of people. And then you realize the only time you're going to use it when the guy's probably already dead. Right.
Yeah.
And you need to resuscitate him. And so it's not like you're going to go practice on your friends.
No.
Right. Because it will kill you. And so it's tremendously painful. I have a heart rhythm problem. So I've been cardioverted 13 times. That means I've been shocked 13 times. Heart stops and then restarts.
Holy shit.
So I know that feeling, right? And I've also been shocked when my face got cut. I don't know if you can see my beautiful scar, but I lost a lot of blood, and then I died on the table, and they had to bring me back as well. And so that was another time. And every time it's ridiculously painful. But the point is if you manage the airway properly, we don't have to go through all that. Yeah. And the way to manage the airway properly is to be able to use positive pressure to then force out the fluid that is then part of this major problem where people feel like they're actually drowning. And that's when they're going into cardiac arrest, and that's when they're going into the hospital, and it's typically too late. Because once you get on a vent and they actually paralyze you to then tolerate the ET tube, getting you off of that vent is a totally different problem. So they like to say you got a 50-50 chance if you go on the vent getting off the vent, because if it starts to breathe for you and your body says, well, I don't need to remember how to breathe, and keep you off, your diaphragm won't be working, So there's other issues as well.
That's interesting.
The CPAP is definitely a bridge And if more people had access to it and knew about it and knew how to use it, and it could, you know, and I would like to, I mean, I'm not doing it to say we should do it to make $1 billion, even though we should capitalize on it.
Right.
I am saying that it's the next best thing to events, right? And that if you ask anybody with any medical training, they would tell you that asphyxiation is, you want to talk about panic and fear, look in someone's eyes. I've seen that a number of times.
Yeah.
They are paralyzed in fear, right?
Wow.
I can imagine that.
That's pretty heavy.
Give me some feedback, huh?
That's pretty heavy, Jim.
It's pretty real, boys. I mean, it's real, right?
Yeah.
If we're gonna talk about as real as it gets, that's as real as it gets.
Yeah.
As real as it gets. Yeah.
Yeah,
No
we're
question.
gonna have our brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers are gonna have these problems. It's gonna happen to somebody. I don't know anybody currently that has it, but I mean, Brennan's boss, you know, there's people that know people. So I'm saying before it gets so crazy, if we can affect just 100,000 lives, you know,
Sure.
there's just a small group that has $1,000 laying around that wants to buy a CPAP conversion kit, you know.
Yeah, you can make that available for them. It could save a lot of lives. Yeah.
I mean, I'm high risk, so I think that I would do it. I'm doing it. I mean, who am I kidding? I have it. I'm doing it. I'm not only and telling people that they should consider it. I'm saying I have one and I'm doing it.
I'm living it.
Yeah.
Because this is it's.
Well, you're right. You know, you said brothers and sisters, everybody we know are going to be in a situation like this. That was one of the things we wanted to talk about today. We want to talk about family and family working in business with family.
Yeah.
Do we want to get this started and rolling?
Yeah,
I think it's
rolling. You know, I think people are going to really respond well to the ideas that Jim's throwing out there. Some other people are going to jump on this too and share it, hopefully. You know, and just get the word out.
Let's start the conversation. There has to be multiple solutions to the problem, right? We can't just look at this. And this is my problem is they say that they're getting all these great professionals together. Well, I don't believe them. Sounds good.
Yeah.
But that's not a war room of people trying to solve problems, because here's why. What do we teach in business, Brad? You don't come to me with just a primary solution. You need multiple
secondary and tertiary.
Your primary won't work every time, right?
Yeah.
It's no different here. It's thinking properly. It's practicing neutral thinking, not positive thinking, and not negative thinking. Not the world's coming to an end.
Yeah.
And everything's going to be great. Somewhere in between's the truth, right? And that's the problem is people are they're believing in their mind that if I just hide long enough, it's going to go away. When I'm saying we need to innovate ourselves out of this problem. I mean, if we're so great, which everyone believes that we're so damn good, well then let's prove it, and let's prove it right now. Let's find a solution to the biggest problem that is basically facing our generation, right? Which is we're going to have a huge economic shutdown. Huge.
Yeah.
We're going to have the worst depression since the Great Depression. This will be called the Great Depression. It's going down. And
you look at too, not just the economic depression, but the psychological fallout, and going back to what you were saying about the impact of those in the war room figuring this thing out and stuff like that. I think we always have to understand it, and just being honest with what is a person's motivation, like what is their calling. Like the Center for Disease Control is about disease control. Like they don't really, it's not about the people and whether they enjoy, whether they're having a good life and they're happy. All they're called to do is disease control. And you look at the hospital, it's triage. Yeah. It's not about the optimal kind of experience. It's about triage. And as long as they're living when they leave, they did their job, Sure. And so I think it's understanding that they might not be bad with what they're like. They're not evil and they're not incompetent. They just might have a different reason for doing what they do, So
well, one is sick care, one is health care, right?
Amen.
And so if you're in the disease business, then that's a long chronic scenario, right? If you're in the death business, you need to be in the casket business. You need to be in, what business are you in? Yep. And I don't want to tie myself to all the death business. I don't want to own 400 crematoriums. I don't want to be in that side of the fence, right? So let's work on the professional rescuer side, and let's go out and let's make a difference with the skill sets we currently possess. You have business skill sets. professional rescuer skill sets. Where's your background? How do you apply all those things in a crisis? And what I'm finding is the real leaders are shining and coming up with solutions and looking for answers, and everybody else is bitch whining, complaining, and blaming everybody else, right?
Well, and you know, it's funny, you know, we look at that, and too, and one of the things I talk with my clients a lot of times is about loci of control, internal loci of control versus external, right? And like, so if it's stuff that you can do, go and do that. But the external stuff, you know, it just is like to complain about it and engage with it in a way of, you know, it's just, hey, if your internal can affect the external, great. But that's, you know, right. that's complaining does you no good, no? So
I mean, it comes down to clearly identifying the problem. Okay. Yeah. Here's a clearly identified problem. We do not have enough ventilators, period. We do not have the capacity to manufacture enough ventilators fast enough to meet the demand. So my solution is, what is the next best option? What is it? It's a modified CPAP machine ramped up with an oxygen port running properly, and you're going to get a certain level of relief. It may not be the exact same relief, but it may be.
Unless you're better than what they're getting, yeah.
Oh, it's 100% better than what they're getting. 1,000%. Yeah, 1,000. And if you're actually drowning, you couldn't put a price on. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you have somebody that's compromised that could benefit from this has to be done. So what we need to do is put a kit together, package it properly, and put it out there and get some feedback. Let these people tear it apart. And if they want to go create a kit and do this and that, good for them. The more power to them. More people should do it. Go get it.
Yeah. Well, and that's a question too, you know, when you look at that as deployment, yeah.
You know, now's not the time to seek patents.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And it's going to change so fast. There's so many people putting ideas into this, you know, yeah. So I think the issue here then really becomes like deployment, because if somebody, you know, is drowning, going out and going, I wonder who does this, is too late, right? You know, and so how do you think we overcome the deployment issue?
We actually do a video and talk about it. We bring on a pulmonologist and a respiratory therapist. We do a actual instructional video, and we sell a kit where you can either modify one locally, go on Marketplace, Facebook, Craigslist, whatever, buy one, or you can buy one from us. We have a website that'll have all of that on it. It's already does, because the guys I reached out to sell these things already. And the guy who is working with me owns sleep centers. So he owns sleep labs, and he works across the United States on sleep centers, and his medical director is a pulmonologist. So you get a pulmonologist, respiratory therapist, sleep therapist.
People that understand
you get a CPAP company that manufactures and sells. He's already currently a distributor. Now you just put some horsepower behind him so he can order properly. And you put kits together, you sell them online, turn it over to my boy Brennan and my good friend Brad, and I'm sure they'll find a way to get millions of them out there. And you know, people that can put it on a credit card, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. And find out where that market is.
We're at a place where people are so crazed about this shit that they're taking you know, aquarium cleaner to get the chloroquine, right? So like,
I know, yeah.
You know, that's where we're at as a culture. And actually that was a week ago. So it's probably even worse than that. So, you know, when somebody comes to presenting a viable solution like this, that just requires a little bit of common sense, as long as you got a good lawyer behind you.
I don't think you need a good lawyer. I think it's good Samaritan law. I mean, just like I would be on scene, and I would need more hands, and I would use walking wounded people to do all kinds of things, to stay, you know, hold a C-spine, a splint, a fracture, you know, anything I'm trying to do before I can package the patients and get them out of there. Right. So, and there would be people telling me, well, can I get sued? Well, listen, if you didn't help, they're dead for sure. By helping, maybe you could, but there's a certain level of just, I don't give a shit. Because I'm trying to save people's life. I'm not trying to make $1 million.
Exactly.
And it costs what it costs.
Open source, right?
Yeah. And it costs what it costs. And so the idea that somehow you can, you know, I mean, a CPAP machine costs what it costs. I mean, it does right now. And so it's not like you're going to get it at a 50% discount. But
no.
My position is, if I was the president, I would go to those Medtronics, ResMed. I'd go to, you know, all of them, and I would say, I need you to do this. I need you to put an oxygen port on it, and I need to have a valve with an N95 filter that attaches to it, and be done with the motherfucker.
Well, if you had the patience to deal with morons, you could call up the president and probably sell this to him, you know, his idea.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if there is getting anything across to that guy. The reality of the situation, I think it needs to go to a different channel. And,
Yeah.
you know, we got plenty of positions out. I think trying to convince a politician anything is just a waste of time, you know?
Sure.
And I think the speed to market, and it really, I don't think we want to lean on the government to solve that problem for us. I mean, it's just, it's that the nature of a government is cumbersome. And like we were just talking here about the SBA. You know, the SBA looks like it's not going to be able to come out tomorrow because it's such a large organization entity. Getting through to make sure that it has all its stuff processed right. And, you know, it's difficult. And, you know, when small businesses compete against large businesses, one of the number one benefits that a small business has is its mobility and agility. And so that's the nature of it too. So I think, right, we're using the wrong tool to solve a problem here.
Right.
That,
no, it's true. It's true that way. And you got to say, one thing I can say about this president, he has no patience for the red tape of government, you know?
That's true. Yeah. So maybe just asking to let us go type of thing, you know?
Well, I think I would. I think I would if it ever brought to my attention, you know, I mean, I'll position with a pulmonologist and something because I'm not reckless. I'm not going to go out there and put my entire life's work on the line when I can have a pulmonologist say, I think this will work, you know? And I can have a respiratory therapist say, I think we could reap some benefit. They won't say it's a better solution than a vent, but what they will say is it's a great alternative to nothing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. There was one I saw that a young gentleman had created a modified one out of those full face snorkel masks. Yeah. And, you know, he said, I think they made 100 of them over in, I think it was in India, but he's like, that's 100 people or 100, you know, users that I never would have been able to help. And that's just worth it there, you know? And so, it's not the primary, but in a pinch, we'll take it. Right. So.
Well, there's also other things depending on the patient. So with a paramedic, we understand the paralytics and how to manage the airway using an endotracheal tube, and we intubate, and it's very intimate. All of that, you got to be close to the patient, and it's just a lot. So with there's an another tube. It's an oropharyngeal airway, and it measures from your jaw to the tip of your ear, and it kind of goes in this type of a shape. It's built like kind of this here. And so what happens is you rotate that down into the airway if somebody's unconscious, and you can still be getting a ventilation value without an endotracheal tube that you have to paralyze the diaphragm to be able to do that, right? So if you had a high-risk patient and they were trying to get them off the vent, get them out, you would put them on a CPAP off the vent out with the ET, without the ET tube, right, with the oropharyngeal airway. And there's also a nasopharyngeal airway that is another one you can put on in the nose to still put that.
At least get air coming in,
Keep air coming in, yeah. So there's some benefits to just that knowledge base and understanding how that all works. But more than that, I think it's an effective fix. And, you know, for the life of me, I can't figure out why we're not talking about that more and talking about alternatives and options rather than here's our primary, and our primary is going to shit before our eyes.
Yeah.
You know, and so we have one governor who's saying, my primary's gone to shit. I need more ventilators than you have available. And they're not providing any alternatives other than there's 10,000 in the warehouse somewhere. Yeah. I mean, that's not enough. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think one way to really lay this thing out is to find one of these governors in one of these states that is really, really strapped. For example, I think New York is going to be there in like a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you just reach out to them and say, look, we have a solution potentially for you. So, you know, you want to roll with this. That's the way to go.
Well, we need to definitely get that in someone's ear, because the fact of the matter is that's an amazing alternative. And I was on the phone with Limhouse right before that. So we got Oregon. We can move in Oregon.
Okay. Well, that's right on the ground right there.
Yeah. And so we got that. But we also got New Orleans is taking a hit right now. Louisiana, because of the Mardi Gras. So they're getting wiped out at a higher death rate because they got a higher obesity level and a lower quality of individual. Well, I mean, from the
health-wise. You're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the quality of the human. I'm talking about the health of the average individual in New Orleans, Louisiana was diminished compared to the health. That's what they're attributing the death rate to. So.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, and Louisiana, I think it was 2,700 people today were diagnosed. 2,700.
We
Wow.
got 200 in Hawaii, and you would think there's 2 million. I mean, they freak
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
freak out,
Yeah.
freak out. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of, and you would guess some of it is because I guess they would probably perceive themselves contained in this kind of, and it is, it's funny you say that because I was actually doing some, being an analytics nerd, right? I was this morning looking at stuff just because, and so there's 39.5 million people in California. 8131 was the infections this morning. And so 0.02%. And they were by far the first ones to lock everything down, stuff like that. Texas, for example, the second largest state, has 28,995,000. They have 3266.01%. Almost half of what, less than half of what it is with, a 10 million less population. And, going through the next ones, New York is actually the fourth largest, but they had 0.038%. Well, anyway, what I'm finding is that there is so many dynamics that go through that why did people feel that affection? Originally being from North Dakota, and the feeling through a lot of North Dakota is we got 100 people infected with the flu. Like, we had one person, they had two people pass. One was over 90. Like, there's sometimes kind of like, wait, what are we worrying about type of thing. And I think sometimes it's just the way in which we are perceived with the information. The same thing when we're in business, you can have two people facing the same scenario, and one is losing their mind. And the other one's just saying, hey, I guess today's Tuesday, right? And so it's amazing just the perspectives that we come from that really, change the way that looks,
No, I see that. But then again, there's Louisiana, right? And you've got a state with 4.5 million people and almost 10,000 probably by tomorrow, probably 12,000 by tomorrow of infected people. And that's like 0.3% of the population of the state. That's.
But their death rate will be higher because their health is lower. Was what the perception is, people in the South,
Yeah.
And so that's just the way it goes. I mean, I'm not the guy to call. I mean, obviously, I'm not the pillar of health.
Stand up and turn around, Jim, so they can all see it. Huh?
Yeah, right.
Who am I? I am round.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. They said, "Are you in shape?" I said, "Round's the shape."
I was gonna say, right. Yeah. But I think as we're going through this process, just appreciating the fact that, whether, and this ties into small business, the way that we perceive these things, it really affects the way in which we engage them, in the way in which we, and like you said, if people start dying at a higher rate, all of a sudden the perception of this thing becomes significantly different than if you don't, and which makes the Hawaii one ironic, right? Where you said the statistics don't support, like if I was in New York City, and my wife does have some friends out there that are occupational therapists in New York City working down in Manhattan, and there is a palpable fear, which in our kind of generalist makes sense. Sure. But like you said, it's interesting how people engage based on what they perceive as their risk.
Yeah. And that's what Jim was saying before about the standard health, that the basic line of health going for, like, on a daily basis anyway. If you're talking about people who already have breathing problems, basically, because if half of them are on CPAP machines already, then you got
very few people though really benefit, because here's why. Asthma is more of a constriction, right? And COPD and emphysema is a different problem, right? We used to call them pink puffers or blue bloaters. Terrible, both of them, right? A pink puffer is somebody that is more with emphysema, and they're trying to just, they blow a lot of that oxygen, and so it's very hard for them. A COPD patient, they can run on a lower hypoxic drive, lower oxygen saturation level, but they're blue. Their color tone, how I'm pink, they're blue. And so if you look at that, you see that bluing of the lips, right? That's low oxygen saturation. So that's what makes that look blue. And so on some patients, you can't flood them with oxygen because it'll kick over their drive. Their body runs on CO2. So they're fine running at a lower level of oxygen. And so emphysema patients are one, some COPDers, depending on, they have a similar problem. And so you have to be careful on that range. But what I'm talking about is somebody who has asthma, somebody who has, they're wheezing or they have any type of breathing issue already. And then you get diagnosed with this, where you have chest pain, which and you have constrictive airway, you can't breathe. And then how people are dying, they're not dying from a fever. They're not dying from a broken bone. They're not dying from a heart attack. They're dying from respiratory distress. They're effectively drowning, pneumonia. Yeah. Okay. So if you think about pneumonia, there's only a few ways to deal with it until you're done. And the way that does work is a vent. And why a vent works is it's positive pressure into the same exact mechanism, just administered deeper into the airway. Okay. Yeah. That's it. So it's not rocket science. It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. It takes common sense. It takes some ingenuity. Yeah. It takes some smarter professionals. We need a respiratory therapist. We need a pulmonologist, an expert in lung production, and then we'll see what we can get. But in the meantime, I think we'd be foolish to not explore this and see if we can actually develop some model to help some people who may be interested in the next best thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that you definitely have the business acumen to put this together, Jim. You've done how many businesses now?
I have no idea how many businesses.
You couldn't even count, right?
I can't even count. Yeah. I failed more times than most people have ever started. Mm-hmm. So think about as many dreams that you've had where you've started and then fell every time there, and then start adding it up, right? Like,
there you go.
they say, how do you count your successes? I said, I didn't count my successes till after my failures. So I got through all those. I failed my way to the top. I learned everything what not to do, and then started doing the others.
What's your biggest failure, Jim?
Biggest failure?
Thing that just did not work.
As far as dollars, or broke my heart, or
let's first go with the dollars and then go with broke your heart.
I think one of my largest failures was a real estate deal where I had no real understanding of real estate, and so I trusted a lawyer. And I trusted a lawyer and a group of investors, and I invested $1.6 million cash. And I was 28, 9, so that was about all the money I had. And I literally, they guaranteed me it was a win, which rule number 1, there's no guarantees.
No guarantees.
So then they said, well, the reason they needed the money up front wasn't so much to buy and secure the property, but we were then investing in our country, and we were working with local lawmakers, and they were moving the urban growth boundary our direction, which the property that we were buying was ranch land, which if they did move our direction would then be developable residential real estate lots, and we would have cleaned up. And so that was it. And so we went, and we were all over there, and they had the meeting, and we got outbid. Somebody else was doing the same thing we were doing, and the urban growth boundary went the other direction.
Oh no.
So I got smoked right off the bat.
So you had to sell it for the same category of land that you bought it at.
Oh, we overpaid for it. Now me knowing what I know now, okay, right. Jimmy Crack Corn would have just put an option on that property.
Right.
In the event this happens, I will exercise that option. I lost all my money. But back then I didn't know anything, and so I just said, whatever. And I trusted people who I thought were smart.
Yeah.
That is why I no longer trust people with a wall of fucking diplomas, right? So if I go into your office and you go, here's my wall of diplomas, I walk out, right? I'm not interested in that educated mindset. I'm interested in the guy with the scars, right?
Yeah.
How many awards have you won in business actually affecting change? How many wins do you have in business? Not how educated you are.
Yeah.
Fuck your education.
It's funny you say that too, because when people come up and how they, that combination of street smarts versus book smarts versus, and I think the respecting of both, it's funny. In our in the office that I have here, the only diplomas I have on the wall are my wife's. So you look at it too. My MBA is in a bin, at home, so like that, or back in North Dakota, and it's amazing that like the combination of people getting high on your horse no matter what you've done, right? And like even Jim yourself, of all the experience you've had, being able to come back and say, I'm fresh, teach me. Teach. And I think that's, if you don't keep that hungry heart of wanting to know and learning, no matter where that happens, whether that's academia or even through that in scars, if you think your scars are the worst scars and the know-it-all scars, you're going to be in trouble, right?
That's it. And that's the only way you learn. I'm telling you, I said this before. I don't have a Harvard education, a Princeton education, or a Yale education, but I do currently have those 3 people working for me. Okay.
Yep.
So I don't have that education, but they do. And they're great, but they're technicians, right? And I'm not that guy. I know I'm not that guy. I'm not the highly educated guy. And if you want the highly educated guy, then I can bring those to you all day long. I'm the get shit done guy. I'm the idea guy, and I'm the executor. I can get it done.
Well, and what's important about that too is really being comfortable with your role. Understanding where I remember one time reading that MIT, the average salary or average earning of an MIT graduate was somewhere in the area at the time of and this wasn't that long ago, maybe 5 years ago, $85,000. And that's a good wage. It's not a great wage because they're not willing to take that risk typically. And that's completely okay. As long as you're in that space and that's what you want to do and you want to be in that room working on that project, and that doesn't matter, that's great. But you got to be okay wherever you're at, right?
Oh, yeah. I once was trying to get my dealer's license in Oregon. Brennan remembers this. And so they said, you can't get a dealer's license. You don't have any automobile experience, right? And so I was like, well, how do I get it? They go, you got to take a title and DMV class, and you got to have 180 hours of automotive experience. So I'm like, so I went to Napa and I said, hey, could I get a job here? And they're like, we don't have a job for you. And so I kept going. So I called a friend of mine that owns some car dealerships. And I said, hey, he's like, well, what do you want to do? I don't care. I just need some hours. What do I got? This is how lame it is, right? And so anyway, I go ahead and I show up in a suit ready to go to work. And I didn't realize that they don't wear suits. They wear like polo shirts and khakis. And so I went for my interview, and they go, I think you're way overqualified. I don't think you're really the right fit for us. And I said, listen, man, I'll work for free. I just need to get some hours, okay? I'm not interested in the paycheck. I'm interested in the training. Yeah. I just need to be here where someone could sign off that I put in enough time.
I'll bring you fucking coffee.
Exactly. I'll bring you coffee. I'll do whatever, right? I just need a job. And so my wife was busting up laughing because I literally went and got a job at a car lot to get the hours. And so one of my best friends who lives in Hawaii out here with me now, he takes care of my dog. He was working there at the time, and he was a salesman for like 5 years. So I arrived there, and they start pushing me through all this, learn everything there is to know about Toyota, Chevrolet, Subaru, all these different lines. And I'm like, I ain't interested in any of that. So, but before that, what they didn't understand is I worked and ran a law firm locally. And so I had access to a group of clients that have already been through the law firm. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, listen, if you need a friend in the car business, I'm your guy. I'm not trying to make a profit. So if you want to buy a car, I'll give you the best deal. Come see me. So what we did is I brought in the first month, I sold 23 and a half cars. I made about $21,000, more than anyone ever that worked in that position in that car dealership ever in Salem, Oregon. And the next month was cash for clunkers. And I broke that record and did 24 cars, made even more money. And then I had enough hours, and I bounced. I was 1 block away from the dealership. I opened up our motorcycle dealership.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so the guys that were the owners of the dealership came down. They were like, why did you leave? You're the best salesman we have. I want you to come back and be our GM of all of the stores and train everybody.
Whatever. Just do it. Keep doing it, man.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just ironic. And the thing is I didn't know how to sell cars. So, I didn't have any problem telling people that. So they go, well, what are you doing here? I need to get enough hours so I could go open my dealership. So if you need a car, I do the paperwork. This is the deal. And, that's the way we go. And I just crushed it.
Yeah, that's a great story, Jim. We're actually at the end of the 40-minute session here, and Zoom is going to shut us down here. So I just want to put a bow on that and say that's fantastic, and thanks for sharing more about your background and just one of the many things that you've done. So
it's awesome.
Yeah. All right, guys.
And you showed the dynamic of your ability to go into different fields and conversations and stuff like that, and it really is a fun, yeah.
It was good. So I really appreciate that. Thanks, guys, and another great episode number 2 right here.
Sounds good, guys.
Good.
I hope you enjoyed the interview today and found value that you can implement in your business immediately. Remember, action is what makes this information all worth it. If you need help figuring out what that action is, go to callwithbrad.com and we'll get some clarity and help you figure out what that should be.